Welcome all to the Agile Accountant, a new episode presented by Alistair Corrie, my colleague, and myself. I'm Ross Maynard. We are both accountants and we're interested in exploring how Agile works in the world of accountancy and in related areas, performance management, management of projects, and so on. For this episode, we are joined by the very youthful looking Dean Latchana, who is the editor of the Agilist and has many other qualifications and qualities, which I'm sure we will be impressed with. And I'm going to pass over to you, Dean, to introduce yourself before we come on to speak of our topic today.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Ross, for the warm welcome, and Alistair as well for this platform. Really pleased to be here. I may look youthful, but as will be revealed throughout this podcast, I do have a rich history of lots of different organisations, and my career spans. I was thinking about it earlier this morning. A quarter of a century. So I've been in this game for 25 years. So I've got some more wounds and some stories to share. Perhaps I could just share a few words about myself and get the ball rolling that way. Awesome. Good stuff. So as Ross correctly said, my name is Dean Latchana. I've been in the Agile space in some guise for a number of years now. And I'd include a transition from organising myself, being able to organize my colleagues, then moving into kind of team management and project management. How might we face into uncertainty? How might we learn incrementally? And how might we deliver value early and often and test those assumptions and have a place of safety so we can be vulnerable, we can be brave, we can challenge assumptions, we can learn rapidly through with the supposed beneficiaries of the project work that we're doing or the initiative that we're focused on. So these could be internal stakeholders or end customers, let's say. So as I mentioned, my career is I'm past the midpoint of my career at this stage, surprisingly. So I've been fortunate to work for a number of different organisations. So from broadcast to newspaper publishing, to some experience in the aviation industry, in big consulting, in recruitment as well. So in fact, I'm currently working at Tech Systems, where I'm helping to head up in Europe the strategic agility practice, where we're helping to identify with our customers at Tech Systems what is valuable to the customers. And sometimes our customers may find it challenging to articulate what their true needs are.
Yeah.
So throughout the sales process, throughout our engagements, and when we roll off, we're trying to work and partner with our customers to understand what's the crux of the challenge, what are the things that we can unpick, which will be a real catalyst to unravel lots of different organizational challenges and problems, address that particular kind of knotted problem, which when unraveled will have a positive cascade of benefit to the organization so they can align to what's valuable in a fast changing world and get good outcomes.
And are there any particular themes that are coming up from that kind of inquiry with your customers?
Yes, I would say, and perhaps this leads on to why I've for a number of years have had growing difficulty with the word agile and in fact agility as well.
Interesting.
And why there may need to be a reframing or a shift in language or the value and conversation to start with customers more towards strategic alignment and execution and validation. So what I mean by that is the challenge that I find in many large and incumbent organizations is that many of the teams and departments and business functions are, quite frankly, all at sea. There's no real alignment on understanding the diagnosis of the problem that organizations trying to align its talent towards. And that manifests in many different ways. I find that I supported a large high street bank in the UK 2-3 years ago, and I think the pandemic also was a contributing factor to this, but I could see in people's eyes they were absolutely slammed, back-to-back meetings. They're exhausted, doing long hours, and I think that's partly because they're trying to spin too many plates as an organization and as a particular function. So that's one manifestation of, I think many of our organizations we support are all at sea. I think many business functions become an industry in themselves, and they don't really align to what is truly outcome driven. They're producing lots and lots of outputs, lots of calories are burnt, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. So from a software point of view, it could be lines of code. From a marketing point of view, it could be many campaigns which have been released and communicated every month. But there's not enough, I would say, in my experience, leaders, managers, and individual contributors to pause and reflect, say, hey, this thing we've been working on for the past 6 months, has it actually addressed the diagnosis of the problem, and are we getting the right feedback, the early indicators to suggest whether we're winning or not? And even then, if we get to that good place, we need to have the bravery to pivot and do something else if we need to, align to what we're trying to do strategically. So to answer your question, Ross, I think that is one of the key things that I'm beginning to learn. And perhaps I'll pause there, but I'm happy to explain also why I'm having trouble with the word agile and agility, those two words. Shall I just mention a few words about that?
I think you should. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Okay. So perhaps a bit controversial, but not a unknown challenge with those two words is that the agile movement has been around for quite some time now.
Yep.
Maybe it culminated, or a particular seminal moment was back in 2001 with the Agile Manifesto. Really groundbreaking, a line in the sand, a realization and articulation of the principles and values in which teams in a complex environment ought to operate. I think it's matured and transitioned into a place which has expanded to be, and the good work that you guys are doing, a testament to this, to values and principles which are great for other functions as well, and other concerns within corporations, such as accounting, such as in marketing, and in fact in engineering and manufacturing as well, surprisingly enough. That said, I think that, like with any movement, it can turn into a business, and for some, the movement and the values begin to descend and become less focused upon. And there's businesses and there's frameworks may actually descend into something which is a little less valuable. And it can, some might argue, for some bodies turn into a bit of a racket and a real distraction. I would also add, before pausing, that there's a slight irony in this, and that as Agilists and people in Agile, we think about what is valuable, we want to get fast feedback, but that should really be applied to the philosophy of any transformation at an individual team or functional organizational level. But the irony is that the implementation of a framework, whatever that might be, becomes in itself an end, but not a means to an end.
Yes.
And I think a lot of organizations have had their fingers burnt with some kind of glorified agile transformation, which they've invested countless millions into over the course of 10, 12 years, let's say. But the fruits haven't really been born to validate its investment and the hope and intent. So those are my few words about why I find the word agile and agility a little bit difficult, and why we may need to, as an industry or a community, really be quite in ourselves brave and maybe change the language to change the thinking and get back to what we were trying to achieve those years ago.
Yeah, rather like what's happened with the lean philosophy to a certain extent. It's become a bit of a racket and a kind of checklist to implement. Anyway, Alistair is the more agilist involved in the Agile Consortium. So sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. I was just saying, that what you're saying there, Dean, is exactly what I think many of us have been feeling for a while. And you mentioned the word irony. The irony of basically replacing one form of bureaucracy with another through the implementation of and the dogmatic fervor with which people hang on to certain aspects of certain frameworks, I think is one of the things which is for another podcast. Maybe what I'll do is invite you onto another podcast that I'm just about to start called Naturally Agile, where we look at the concept of the fact that we're all born naturally agile, and we lose that agility through layers of bureaucracy, institutionalization, and so forth. And what would happen if we actually stopped? If we removed those and actually did what we're doing right now, which is just talking and collaborating, and what I'm interested in on that front, just for 2 seconds, is the fact that those of us who have a financial brain, who have been trained in things like risk management and making sure that we understand governance and so on, making sure that we understand agile within those contexts and within that concept, not just on its own running and doing whatever. So agree with you. Whether we want to change the word, I've had many discussions with many people, and I wonder whether we take the second part of what you said, which is be brave and bold as a community, and reclaim what we mean by the word agile and agility. And I think that there's probably worth us exploring that first, rather than invent something new, because as soon as you invent something new, come up with something new, everyone goes, oh, here we go, idea of the month, now what are they trying to peddle? Whereas if we just reclaim it for ourselves and say, this is what we, the true agilists, the natural agilists, believe agile is, then we'll go there. But that's for another podcast, Dean. And no doubt a very exciting one. But what we wanted to do today, if I may, is
before we do that, Alistair, before we move on to today's topic, I just wanted to get Dean's experiences of working with finance teams through some of these agile transformations that he's been involved in.
Yes, working with finance teams, and this may be an outlook that many Agilists have. That it's almost like a distant cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is we know that this function exists, and we have an impression that it's extremely important and significant, yet it always appears to be at arm's length. We don't really seem to rub shoulders together. And I think the feelings may also be mutual in the other direction as well. So my actual experience of working directly with financial teams is somewhat rare, but those rare occasions have been really, really special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar to what we discussed already, is being able to have an open dialogue where we feel safe to be brave about sharing what our concerns and interests are. And I think also we have different incentives or different ways in which we show success to our peers and to our leaders. And we also have patterns of behavior. Just quoting one particular thought leader, Dave Snaden, has this phrase of pattern entrainment, in that within a big particular business function, we have procedures or processes or ways in which we conduct ourselves where it needs very little energy, because these are successful patterns where we are incentivized to follow. And because of that, within finance and say the space of agility, we are like, sometimes it's like two ships like passing each other at night. We speak different languages, we have different rhythms, we have different concerns. That said, to answer the question, I did do a nice piece of work at a UK grocery retailer a good number of years ago now, pretty close to 10 years ago now, where we were working with a number of individuals from finance, and we were able to appreciate that a lot of the innovation we were doing within this organization, this is in-store innovation, it was too early to say what the return investment would be or the future cash flow would be. So we set up an understanding where we would have, I call it limited liabilities, in which we have the blessing and the grace to run experiments to get that fast learning. So I'll give you one example where we were wanting to introduce a way in which customers could pay for items within small convenience stores without having to go to the checkout, because we knew that was a friction point and customers may not like the experience. They may not even go to the convenience store, particularly when it's very busy. So it's one in an office location at lunchtime.
Yeah.
So we wanted to innovate with customers using the barcodes and items to scan it with their iPhones at the time. But from a financial point of view, that's extremely risky, because in retail there's a phenomenon called shrink, where customers could just pretend to scan a bottle of whiskey or some razor blades or some expensive batteries and just put it in their bag and walk out the store. So we imposed the people who the stakeholders who were the most apprehensive and the most reticent to run this experiment, we actually included them in experiment design, not despite them. And so what we did, we worked with finance to be able to ensure that the early experiments were just on meal deals, that you weren't able to use the app to pay for expensive items. It was just in 3 local stores. It was for 3 weeks. And we started off with colleagues first of all. So that put liabilities on the financial losses that could have occurred.
Yeah.
It was we had our stand-ups and our fortnightly reviews to see whether we needed to persevere or pull the plug on this. So we had almost like a way of pausing this experiment immediately if it really was going off the rails.
Mm.
If it showed that from a financial point of view, it just was not viable. So here I'm beginning to talk about innovation accounting, where we set the conditions where we don't know the return on investment immediately. We don't know the cash flow. We don't know the revenue which may occur or be saved or gained, but we are looking for learning opportunities, and we design that experimentation with the people who may be the most skeptical. We include them in the experiment design, not despite them. And this is a really good way of getting that fast feedback to know whether to pivot or persevere on the next set of experiments and what the next set of leading indicators might be. So that to answer your question, I think that's an example of working with finance so that we could collectively understand that we want to emphasize learning, understand what the risks are, and if a series of experiments across the different initiatives, only probably 1 in 10 are really going to be successful. So we work with them to say, can this graduate to the next level of judicious and careful scaling? And of a few of those who do scale, only a few of those are going to be operational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would your advice then be to managers, maybe project managers, who kind of want to get the finance people involved, but are a bit scared of, the finance people because what they'll say about risk or cost management or these sorts of things? What would be your advice to those managers to get the finance people involved?
Yes, I think 2 things. One is the benefit and the blessing of this engagement with this UK grocery retailer was that this transformation and this set of innovations actually came from the top, which is not always the case, I appreciate. So this was a piece of work which was enabled by the CEO, who appointed a transformation director, and the CFO of this large organization was also on board. And that CFO then appointed a small team of like-minded people in terms of finance who were open to support innovation teams who were mavericks and corporate innovators and real change agents. So I think that's one element. Another element ties into what we were showing towards the start, was being able to have a safe space where people can be brave and articulate what their concerns and what their hopes and desires are. So having that environment where, say, an innovation team can express a concern that trying to get a return on investment or some kind of financial gain or scaling from 0 up to operationalism is just not going to cut it. They're not in that environment where they can give that guarantee. But vice versa, perhaps those in the financial team, their concerns may be balancing the books, or it might be ensuring that operationally this can wash its face, to coin a phrase, or that the capital investment is going to pay for itself. So this is why incrementalism is really, really important. And it's almost like an innovation portfolio where we have a number of different diverse investments, some of which may pay off. But of the 9 out of the 10, let's say that's the ratio, who don't pay off, at least we haven't bet the farm on it.
Yeah.
So this I think will begin to satisfy the concerns from a financial point of view.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm.
I think that's a good place to pause our discussions with Dean for our first episode, and we'll come back in the next episode to talk about innovation accounting, which sounds really interesting to me as an accountant, though I know it's not strictly financial. So we'll come back to the next episode. Thank you, Dean, so far.